What starts here changes the world. I have a few suggestions that may help you on your way to a better world. And while these lessons were learned during my time in the military, I can assure you that it matters not whether you ever served a day in uniform. It matters not your gender, your ethnic or religious background, your orientation, or your social status. Our struggles in this world are similar, and the lessons to overcome those struggles and to move forward, changing ourselves and changing the world around us, will apply equally to all. So here are the 10 lessons I learned from basic SEAL training that hopefully will be of value to you as you move forward in life. Every morning in SEAL training, my instructors, who at the time were all Vietnam veterans, would show up in my barracks room, and the first thing they'd do was inspect my bed. If you did it right, the corners would be square, the covers would be pulled tight, the pillow centered just under the headboard, and the extra blanket folded neatly at the foot of the rack. It was a simple task, mundane at best, but every morning we were required to make our bed to perfection. It seemed a little ridiculous at the time, particularly in light of the fact that we were aspiring to be real warriors, tough, battle-hardened SEALs. But the wisdom of this simple act has been proven to me many times over. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. During SEAL training, the students are all broken down into boat crews. Each crew is 7 students, 3 on each side of a small rubber boat, and 1 coxswain to help guide the dinghy. Every day, your boat crew forms up on the beach and is instructed to get through the surf zone and paddle several miles down the coast. In the winter, the surf off San Diego can get to be 8 to 10 feet high, and it is exceedingly difficult to paddle through the plunging surf unless everyone digs in. Every paddle must be synchronized to the stroke count of the coxswain. Everyone must exert equal effort, or the boat will turn against the wave and be unceremoniously dumped back on the beach. For the boat to make it to its destination, everyone must paddle. You can't change the world alone. You will need some help. And to truly get from your starting point to your destination takes friends, colleagues, the goodwill of strangers, and a strong coxswain to guide you. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we called them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys from every corner of the nation and the world always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Carrots Project podcast. Today we're here with Peyman Askari. He is another person who's a Canadian freedom fighter and who was a PPC candidate, and he's had me on his show a couple times. We've had him on, and well, introduce yourself.
Hey Dale, good to be back here. I don't know, I'm an ordinary Canadian, had a business. I got fed up during COVID. I tried running for office unsuccessfully, but I learned a lot and I'm still learning. And I have a fatal defect, a flaw where I still believe that Canada can be saved. So, the battle continues.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of what got you into deciding to podcast? Just kind of briefly before we get going here.
I was doing volunteer work for the National Citizens Inquiry, and I was the lead volunteer when members of the public wanted to talk to anybody. Those people got directed to me, and the conversations were really fascinating. Like these are, it's not like some farmer who has no idea about anything in the world. It's a farmer who understands the rule of law better than any lawyer in downtown Vancouver. And after a couple dozen of these, I'm like, why don't I just create a podcast? I bring these people on. It'll be fun. It'll educate the rest of Canadians, but I'll educate myself. So everything I know right now is through conversations with Canadians that have a wealth of knowledge and wisdom.
All right, that's good. I mean, I got on there because there wasn't enough people saying what was going on, and so I decided to say it for people. Right? There's a lot of people whose stories aren't getting told, and the mainstream media isn't picking up a lot of the stuff that needs to be said. And so I'll just put a plug up here because we're going to talk a little bit about this. Derek Reimer is having a court hearing here in Calgary coming up this upcoming month, and there's an event that he's having for it right here. So I'll put it up on the February 24th. And so if anybody can come out at the courthouse, because we did a petition for redress of grievances for Derek, that Derek signed and Artur Pawlowski signed, myself and my daughter. And one of the asks that we're asking for this is to have them use what is it? To commit using the notwithstanding clause on the any Bill C8 and C9 here in Alberta, which is very detrimental to all Canadians, but also detrimental to Albertans as well. And so this is something that we want to have done. So if anybody can come out and support, by all means, do so and share it if you are not.
Dale?
Yeah.
Maybe you should break this down for the audience, because I didn't understand the first time you mentioned using the notwithstanding clause, because people think that the notwithstanding clause is for the provinces to use to pass a bill to sidestep the Canadian Supreme Court. It's not to shut down a federal bill. Explain how that works.
Well, they can, if they don't like a bill and okay, this is unconstitutional, let's do something about it. They can use the notwithstanding clause to block its enforcement while they're going through the courts to deem it unconstitutional. So if they try to push something tyrannical, they can use it and say, well, we don't agree with this because this doesn't go against the charter, and we're going to go, take you to court over it. But until that time, you're not going to be able to enforce it, right? And that gives them a bit of a protection, so they should be able to use that in that manner. So that's really all that is.
We'll see what happens, because their referendum is going on right now, I believe. And Donald Trump is not too happy with Mark Carney, so I'm pretty sure he's going to unleash the CIA eventually to meddle in that referendum. And Mark Carney's probably going to do the same thing with CSIS. And let's see where we end up.
Well, yes, and I want people to kind of understand here, because a petition for redress of grievances is very, very different than just your average petition. A lot of people think, well, oh, I just get a bunch of signatures and then hand it in, but that's really not the way that works. And so I'll pull it up here so people can see. All right. So this is the brief portion of the petition, right? So you have here. Let me just make that full screen so that it becomes easier here.
Is that written in Old English font?
Yeah, this is actually, when I looked it up, this was the font that they're supposed to be using, right? And so it has all of these, I go through there and it has the evidence for the different petitioners, right? It has up here. So I actually go through and write out a whole list of what happened to all the people, and there was me, Pastor Artur Pawlowski, Derek Reimer, and my daughter. And this you can find at dsrcaresconsulting.com /the CARES Project Action Plan, or if you just go there, you click on the action plan at the top of the screen, you'll find all of this. And it writes out a brief of everything that happened, talked about what happened with me, what happened with Derek, what happened with Artur, and how the courts are being weaponized. And we did this under article, it's protected under Section 2. This comes from our Westminster parliamentary, common law. So this is being used in England. We went back and researched it all the way back to 1680 with how it was done. And then it was put into the U.S., codified in their constitution, but brought in through our common law. And it's protected by Section 2. And because cruel and unusual punishment or treatment and torture was used explicitly, we're also using Article 13 of the Convention Against Torture that allows you to complain to anybody. And we've demonstrated that the police would not deal with it, that every step that we took, it was not dealt with. And the last place they could deal with it is in Alberta, in the legislature. And because of the aspect of the way the RCMP was involved in this, and with the arrest with Artur and so forth, and with myself, the provincial policing, because the provinces don't have full control over the disciplinary actions of disciplining the RCMP, it's not constitutional.
Dale?
Yes.
Sorry, I have Alzheimer's. This is in the Alberta Legislature, right? You didn't give this to any court.
No, this goes straight to the Alberta Legislature. Actually, I gave it to the NDP MLA, Janet Eremenko, who's Calgary Curry. That's where Artur's MLA. And then I gave it to Peter Singh, who is the Calgary East MLA, where Artur's church is. And
Let
then
me ask you,
yes.
What's their view towards people like us? Do they view us as vermin who defied the government and killed their grandmother? Or are they actually taking this seriously? When you hand this over to them, how do they treat you?
Well, I mean, they get very nervous whenever I've actually came in and brought this information in, right? I talked to Mickey Amery, the Attorney General of Alberta, and I gave it to him in his hands. I walked up to the front of the room when everybody's standing up and clapping, and I gave it right to him, right? And so, 200 people saw me hand it over to him. And then one guy tried to take it from him when he's walking out the door. I grabbed it from him and I took it outside and I handed it and said, "This is for him." And I talked to him outside for a few minutes, and I was explaining to him what was in there, and you could see that he was visibly disturbed from when I was talking to him. And a lot of people do, because they understand what's going on, right? Because somebody doesn't walk up to the politician and say, "This is what's going on, you need to deal with it," if they're just, they don't, people who are not lying about it, they don't report it. And so they know what's going on. They don't want to deal with it because there's a lot of pressure not to. But the people have to bring the pressure. That's really all there is to it. Right?
So you gave it to the legislature and the Attorney General? Or the AG is also a cabinet minister?
Yeah, he's a cabinet minister. So when you give a petition, you don't have to actually physically take it to the legislature. You can give it to any member, any MLA. The way that it works under from the British common law is that once you've given it to one member, the obligation is on every member of that house legislature to bring it forward to the floor. And because of the grievous nature that it was tied to the COVID pandemic response, that there was also tied to how they would spread the bioweapons that they were sending over, that they sent over to Wuhan, that we knew that found its way into the genetic profile that was put out by Shi Zhengli and Peter Daszak that had the Bangladesh strain of the Nipah virus. That was, they put this out publicly, and they had a doctor that came in, Dr. Stephen Quay, and he analyzed it and said that there was contamination from the Bangladesh strain of the Nipah virus. And so this is all connected, and that's all in there. This was given to the RCMP. They had met the threshold to investigate these people for high treason and terrorism and so forth, but they refused to do it, right? And then they, yes.
So how did you? I'm sorry, I'm turning this around. It's like I'm interviewing you, but I'm trying to get a sense of this. How did you get Artur Pawlowski on board? Did you have a prior relationship with him? Did you pitch the idea and he liked it, or was this his idea to begin with?
No, I pitched the idea to him. I had a prior relationship with him. Like, I've met him a few times before. And then, I mean, it came and talked at his church and gave my testimony about what happened to me at his church. I think it was in 2024, and so forth. And so when I talked to him about this, I was like, well, I'm doing this anyway. Do you want to sign on? And he said, yes. And then got Derek Reimer as well involved, because what happened with him is we're watching him being persecuted real time over something that is protected. Religious beliefs are protected under or protected speech, but they're prosecuting for a hate crime, and he hasn't even met the threshold, and he's been put in jail a bunch of times. This is where you're in that area of torturing people because they don't think the same way as you, right? At the very least, putting him through that process is cruel and unusual punishment. But when you're constantly then incarcerating him over something that is not a criminal offense, that's way off base. And that's the judicial system. They don't have the right or the authority to do that.
Can I ask, why didn't you reach out to the Coots for? Like, that is a clear-cut case of torture, 3 years in remand. I can't believe that was allowed to occur. That's IRGC territory.
I did. I actually was dealing with them before, but then obviously there was a lot of stuff that went on sideways with after what happened when there was the issues they're saying with the trying to say people were grifting money and all that kind of stuff, where it kind of blew up. That was, and sort of lost touch with them. But I actually talked to Chris Carver, and so I got some of his information. But I had put in the ACERT package and some of the stuff that were sent over, maybe not the ACERT package, but I put in some of the complaint packages and actually submitted to the RCMP that had the stuff for Tony Olynyk and what they were doing to him and the medical treatment they were denying him. That is explicitly torture. And this is going to be going into other areas because I did have some of their information and it will be put forward. But this is just to start the investigation. And they're well aware of this because I talked to them and I said, this is all connected because Rook's orders that Artur Pawlowski was arrested on, and these were the things that they had the mandates for. The engineering report that I put into the Court of King's Bench in Alberta would have forced him to rescind this because the first step of a pandemic response, once the cat's out of the bag, is engineering controls. And they did not do this. Nobody did properly. And so then they were able to bypass it, do bad administrative controls, and go directly to PPE and then the vaccines. So the public health, let me put it this way. Public Health Agency of Canada has full knowledge of what they should do in a pandemic response because they run the level 4 lab in Winnipeg where they sent the pathogens to Wuhan. So when the Public Health Agency directed Minister Patty Hajdu to initiate the quarantine response, they were wrong, because quarantining is not the first thing that you do.
I understand what you're saying, Dale, but like that's the impetus, and I get that. But even if they didn't make the mistake with quarantine, this is just patently Nazi-like when they're like the BC Mental Health Act, when they're drugging people against their will, specifically to silence them because they're going against the government narrative. Like even if you had a reason to do that, that's still Nazi.
You don't, when you look at what they're doing and how they're going after people, what they're actually doing is demonstrating that they're covering up what they're doing, because it's not just an accident. You're not going to drug somebody for an accident. If it was an accident, you didn't know what was going on, and they came and brought it to your attention, you'd be like, okay, we really need to fix this. But it was silencing of dissent of what they were doing. It's retaliation. And when you look at it, and you sit down and say, oh, well, it was one person, but the amount of people that it's happening to, it's the pattern is there.
This woman, I interviewed this girl, and backstage, she told me a story about her aunt or great aunt. She was in Austria, and when the Nazis came in, she was standing up to the Nazis, and she had a newspaper publication, and she was putting anti-Nazi information. They called it propaganda.
Yes.
They found her with her throat slit and her breasts cut off. That's a warning to the other people, like, you better not talk out or this is what's going to happen to you. That's what's happening in Canada when they're drugging you against your will, when they're throwing you in jail for 3 years. 3 years in remand, and it's like we've moved on and everything is peachy, and Mark Carney's in and he's going to fix everything.
Yeah, and in my case, those were both my daughters, right? Okay. My youngest daughter, I haven't seen her for almost 6 years now. She's going to be 7 next month, right? And this was 100% political, because the judge that was dealing with my COVID case was dealing with my family matter case, and the court directed the RCMP to keep me out of court. And this is all in their own documents that they provided to me from the Attorney General of Canada. And so you look at 3 years, you say 3 years is bad. Don't get me wrong. My daughter has had almost a 6-year sentence of not being able to see a loving father that she has, that she is getting irreparable damage done to her. And this is not just happening to me, it's happening to many other people who have lost their kids because they oppose the government narrative.
Have you considered reaching out to these people, or is it impossible to find them?
Who?
Other parents who, like, they're weaponizing the family court system almost to silence them.
I'm working with a lot of people behind the scenes that are in this same position. What they're doing, what people don't realize, is when you take someone's kid unlawfully, it puts them in a very bad situation. Even the Supreme Court of Canada, you go up and look at Section 7 under Charterpedia, and it will tell you that separating a parent and child is the worst type of trauma that somebody's going to experience. And taking somebody's child and putting it in that situation, it is better that you kill the parent than to leave them in that situation. Because you can only kill someone once, but you're torturing a child. And then not only are you torturing the parent and the child, but you're causing irreparable developmental damage to the child. When you remove a father from a child's life, they're instantly going to be, the single mother is going to be in a very bad situation. The child is going to be more likely to be sexually abused, more likely to go to prison, and all these things. So when you're doing this, you're actually causing extreme amount of harm. And the way that the family court system is set up, there's no due process. And when you throw in like child and family services, you're looking at organizations that are operating like they're trafficking. Because what happened with me, when you look at the elements of the case where the court directed the judge to keep the police to keep me out of court, and the police were a defendant in one of the cases, both of them were in first appearances, Then the judge goes to my ex-wife's lawyer, asks for a draft order on a first appearance, and she sends something to settle the entire divorce, sell the house, all that stuff. I get arrested going into court. None of the documents say that they know. Everybody doesn't know where I was.
Dale,
Yes.
I think we're going too fast for the audience, and I know that because I've known your case for a while now. The audience doesn't.
Yes.
My interpretation of this is that you have two parallel issues. So one is the aforementioned torture, the
Yes.
mistreatment that's bordering on torture that arises from the other issue is the implosion or the collapse of law enforcement and the judiciary and the prosecutor. Like the prosecutor and the judge, at least they should be separate, but they're all working together. And in this narrative, the defendant is the enemy.
Yes. See, the torture where it is that I have documents that the woman who swore in to get the warrant, she lied, and she put this in my medical record, and I submitted this to the police. So you cannot swear in, so the warrant's automatically invalid. So they grab me, take me, strap me to a bed, they drug me against my will. They actually question me and interrogate me, the doctors, about this. You're done. Like that's more, you've got more than probable cause to investigate for torture. They shouldn't have done that. And then when you look at the political aspect, yes, but the tie that ties them together is the judge. The judge dealt with both matters on the same day. One, keep me out of court to talk about the COVID because I had the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists in that court hearing because they were responsible for doing something about it and they did not. And people are dead as a result. And then the family matters. So the judge keeps me out of court, wipes me out financially, cuts me off from my kid who's already abducted, which is a crime, and then ensures that I can't fight back. And essentially makes me homeless.
I get what you're saying, that the judge is the linchpin of the whole thing, but I look at it as the executive has collapsed into the judiciary, which has collapsed into law enforcement. Law enforcement is part of the executive, but it's supposed to be separate. So these three have collapsed. They're all working in cahoots with one another. And somewhere along the way, they're like, hey, why stop at slapping these guys around when the camera's off? Why don't we just resort to torturing them? Like that's how I see this story.
Yes, and this is the hallmarks of a totalitarian society, right? Because Dr. Mel Boucher got the same thing. And then you look at Artur, the way they arrested him, they treated him like a terrorist. And then you look at what they did with the Coots boys. They treated them like terrorists, and the charges they charged us with were charges that would go alongside terrorism charges. And this is what the whole purpose of initiating the Emergencies Act was to do this. And the same thing with what they did with the people in Ottawa. This was to put the fear of God in them that if you dare stand up to us against our totalitarianism, this is what we're going to do. This is what this is about, right?
I forget now. It's been like 4 or 5 years since the Freedom Convoy. The reason they tried to get the Coots to be they wanted the Coots boys to do something, so use that as justification as insurrection to bring in the Emergencies Act, but like it didn't happen in time, so they went a different way. They said there was a national security threat, the protesters in Ottawa.
Well, I'm not sure exactly about that decision-making process, but what I do know, I talked to Vincent Gerses and some other people about what was going on, and they changed the intelligence, and people were saying that they changed the officers that they were dealing with and brought in different ones. And then we know that the CSIS was like, no, this is not an issue. But then the national security minister or advisor, whoever was there in Ottawa, decided to just go out and create their own narrative and say, well, that doesn't matter. And they use CBC and all this different stuff so that they could go in and initiate the Emergency Measures Act. But the point is that because of what they did at the beginning, the entire pandemic response is the crime. That means that issuance of the Emergency Measures Act, because the moment that the Public Health Agency of Canada directed Patty Hajdu to initiate the Quarantine Act. That created a de facto state of emergency, and then all the provinces afterwards were calling their own state of emergency, because Canada, the Public Health Agency of Canada, doesn't have any power to initiate a state of emergency, but the Quarantine Act effectively did that. It let people know that there was something going on, right? So their action led first. Not saying their decision making, but they were the first to do anything, and then all the provinces came later, and then the things that they did reinforced this. So there was a crime from the beginning. This is why the hammer came down on me so hard, because it got them at the beginning, and they would have to ask, why did they do this? Because this is standard operating procedure, what I was bringing them, what they did, and the response is not. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like, it's very difficult for two people like us to have a conversation about law, whether something is lawful or unlawful, when we are acting outside of the law. This is like Julius Caesar gets into Rome, then he's killing a couple of people that are speaking out against him. Well, yeah, he's crossed the Rubicon. Like, we've crossed the Rubicon, and I don't see any justice. You're mentioning Rook, the judge, Rook the crook. Okay, well, if you got judges like that are, they're disobeying their oath to the law, what recourse does somebody like me have? How much faith could I have in the system?
Well, it's not about how much faith you have in the system, because there's no the system itself is not what's the issue. It's people inside the system that's the problem, because the system in and of itself doesn't do bad or wrong. It's a construct by people. It's what the people within that system actually do, right? So you have a group of people, for whatever reasons, and there are all different reasons for a lot of different people, are not doing the right thing. The outcome is the same, regardless of what their motivation for doing it. It doesn't matter. The outcome is the same. And so, under our Constitution, the legislative branch is responsible for the laws, and in the provinces, they are responsible for the administration of justice. The federal government appoints the judges, and they write the Judges Act, but for what they do in the courts and the operation of the courts and the law enforcement and everything else like that, that is in the exclusive control of the provinces. And back to the Coots boys, the RCMP were the ones that were dealing with that. If you have a problem with the RCMP and what they do, you have to go to Ottawa. Under the Constitution, Section 92, subsection 14 of the Constitution Act in Article 6, you will see that the provinces have the exclusive control of the administration of justice. So if you can't control it provincially, then your law under Part 7 of Section 52 of the Constitution Act 82, the Charter section, the Supremacy Clause says the law is of no force. The RCMP Act was put into force in 1985, right? So they have really no jurisdiction. Their law is of no force for the purposes of local and provincial policing within a province, because they're not controlled in the provinces and there's no way to restrain them. So either they have to be put under subject to the provinces for that contract, or they need provincial police. Those are your only two options. And so,
look,
yes, go ahead.
I get what you're saying. It's jurisdictional. It's a violation of a jurisdictional constraint built into the Charter or the BNA Act for a specific reason. I look at it. I don't look at it from that perspective. I look at it from the perspective of sort of DEI. So you had an RCMP that did serve with integrity up until the early 90s, mid 80s. They made some mistakes, but like you have to be competent. You have to know how to use a gun. You have to know when to kill somebody and when not to kill somebody. And then DEI comes along, and you get something like the CBSA, where people are getting promoted based on you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, which is it's a form of nepotism. We call it DEI. Yes. And that's not a provincial issue. That's not just in BC. That's happened across the board in all the provinces.
Yes, and what you'll do is you'll get in incompetent people that cannot normally compete. And this is why it's very bad, because
Exactly.
then they become desperate to keep their jobs because they know they really, in their back of their mind, they know they shouldn't be there. And when you have weak controls to discipline people, then when they're told to do questionable behavior, they know that they're not going to get repercussions for it. Because if the brass up top or you are telling you that don't worry, we got this, do what you're told or you're going to be out, what are they going to do? They're going to do what they're told because they're afraid, right?
That's kind of what I mean when I say the executive is collapsing into the judiciary and the law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, there is no more integrity. And I don't know, I don't necessarily want to go there right now with the whole feminism thing, but the family court system, that where the government says to the woman, I got your back, but now, you owe me. It's the same thing with DEI. The government says, I got your back, I'll hire you, despite the fact that, you're not qualified, but because of the color of your skin, now you owe me. It's like the jailhouse thing where they put their hand in the back pocket of the government.
Yes, and I'm gonna say the quiet part out loud. Feminism, biggest DEI, biggest recipients of DEI are white women by a long shot, because they got put into places where men should be and are elevated above every other class of women that are different races. They benefited the most from it because they amassed the most amount of power. Because if you go back to first wave feminism, they looked at the white men as the obstacle to their power, the ones that they needed to overcome. And so their sights were set on them from the beginning. And white women, because of this way society was structured then, they had a higher status and they maintained it. The elite ones and the average ones, you don't really get that much from it, right? But the elite women did. Because if you go back and look at most of them, they were elite women, or they were backed by elite people and got into places that average people cannot. But this,
I got to ask you, is that where DEI started? Was there a DEI before feminism?
no, because men had to compete. Like when you look in male dominated field, you can take the best woman that is in a male dominated field, and if you put her up against the best man, it's not even going to be a contest. She might be better than some men, but they're not great. And that's why they have different physical standards for women and men, because they're not the same, right? And even mentally, men and women process things differently. Not saying that one's less intelligent or not. They have different ways of doing things. And that's just based on our biology. Women are more receptive to emotion because they have to emotionally bond with a child that doesn't talk. And they bond with the child from inside while the child's inside of them. Men, we don't do that. We don't.
You described every one of my relationships. They have to bond with the child that can't speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Feelings are the bad F word for men. No, but you know what I'm saying? And men are protectors, and there's reasons for it, right? And we're designed to deal with things at a little bit more logically on average than a woman does when we're under pressure. And men they're very much feminized. From when I was growing up as a kid, and I look at the younger generation, even what's happened to people like the millennials and stuff, I'm like, you can see the effects of the manipulation. And that's where it comes down to.
I've talked about this quite often because I came from the Middle East, which was more of a masculine, actually Iran was hyper masculine. It's extreme masculine, but even before the revolution, it was more masculine. And I saw how the society was being feminized. But now it's almost like you can't talk about it, because once you start talking about it, then Donald Trump kidnaps Maduro. Then, you start talking about it again, Carney goes to the WEF. Like they're constantly changing the news cycle, and you can never really talk about any one thing.
Well, this is the whole point. People have to start unplugging from the news cycle. I'm going to bring a clip up here since we started going down this direction. And this was from an interview with Andrew Tate. He talks about what they're doing on the internet and online and so forth. And people need to listen to us because this is actually true.
Not only can they shape a narrative, but they can use the narrative shaping to force action. If you're, for example, Candace, who I love, I am a fan of Candace. I will ride for and protect Candace to the end. But if she presents 5 theories on why something happened, and one of them is getting a bunch of traction positive, that doesn't mean it's true. In fact, it might mean the opposite.
Charlie Kirk was a time traveler.
My point is, we're now at a stage with the internet where it is so heavily manipulated by government agencies. Nothing you read is real. All the people you think you're interacting with aren't real. And the ones that are real are psyoped by the other accounts that aren't real. So everyone's a bot. Everyone's an agent. And they're convincing people to do very silly things. You could be a nobody retard streamer and sell out everybody who's ever tried to help you, even people who are more important than you, believing you're getting likes and clicks and believing you're doing the right thing and believing, people like me now. And you're just destroying yourself. And the system is keeping you there where you belong as a nobody. So I know things that I've been told from credible sources. And basically everything that you're currently experiencing online is a scam. When you're on the internet, you need to consider yourself alone. You need to approach the internet like, I'm alone here. And I'm actually, for the first time, directly interacting with the simulation, like the Matrix movie. I'm going to talk to the head of the machines, and all the sentients are around me. All the machines are around me, the agents are around me, the hologram programs, the sentients, the machine mind is here. I'm here to talk to the machine and understand what the machine is trying to convince me of, what it wants me to do. But there's no people here. This is empty. This is a desert. I'm here by myself. Because the feed, the algorithm that I am being fed, may not have any real people on it at all. And the other real person who's logged in has a brand new algorithm, different than me, a different For You page, and he has a whole new different set of bots convincing him of different things. The liberals have their circles, the conservatives have their circles, we're at war, everyone has their own circles, reading their own bots, feeding them their own things. No one's talking to each other, we're all isolated. Everyone's by themselves. If you accidentally cross over into someone else's sphere, you just read all the crap that's being sent at them and you join in. None of it's real anymore. How have the governments, as completely corrupt as they are, remained in power? Considering we now have unlimited access to information and can communicate instantly globally around the world with anyone. So how the did the people who are corrupted to the core stay in power? Surely the internet was a panic moment for them. Surely they thought we have to shut this stuff down. But now it's bigger than ever. Are the people who are in charge of the entire planet stupid? I mean, people seem to sit, they go, our politicians are idiots. Look at the state of the country. You think it's because they're dumb? Or do you think it's because they want it? Like, are you so ignorant that you think they're ignorant? They run the world. And if you're a smart person who's not in their club and starts to do really amazing things, you end up joining their club. So let's also argue. Not only, I'll ask you a question. Are the people in charge of the world idiots? If the answer to that is no, my next question is, are the people who are in charge of the world pretty good at convincing all of the world's best talent to join them? I mean, considering they can shoot you in the face. The answer is yes. So the best people on the planet do what? They rule the world. So are we going to sit and pretend that they've just let us all get this big group, this big club, where we can all sit there and just talk to each other and, oh, hey, I think, and just work it all out?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with his overall sentiment.
Yeah.
Everything is fake. This Iran conflict, it went above and beyond. Like, I think somebody at the CIA, they spilled the coffee on their keyboard and it messed everything up, and it just like ramped it up to the point where everything on both sides looked unreal. Like, the CIA was pushing all this narrative that Iran's killed 60,000 civilians unarmed, and the IRGC was putting out these videos. Millions of supporters of the Iranian regime, they come out, and what that does is you just throw your hands in the air. You're like, screw it, I'm going to the bar.
Yeah, and this is the whole point. This is what they're trying to do, is to do this. And so we have to look at the fact that this thing is completely contrived and manipulated and everything else like that. They put it down into very small, like, dopamine hits and then they feed this to you, and then you see this constantly and repetitively and so forth. And this is the problem. This is a huge problem, right?
It is. Like, this has been going on for a while. I mean, before the internet, when you had the mainstream media, like they would, figure out the one issue of the week or a couple, and they would get together and they're like, all right, this week it's going to be, I don't know, the race-based shooting in Minneapolis or something, right?
Yes.
And next week it's going to be Tiananmen Square. The week after that, it's going to be something else, like a revolution in South America. Now, because there's so much more information, they can't control it directly. They're using censorship. So somebody like this podcast right now is probably gonna get like no views. They're like, all right, these guys are telling the truth. Let's deboost them.
Yes.
This one guy is talking about Jews running the world. Let's increase his following for that episode by 20%.
Yes. And this is how it's done. Like we were saying, like, you look at the people like Peter Thiel, who helped fund Facebook when Mark Zuckerberg was starting out. Well, he's got he's a defense contractor, right? You look at all of these people who are funding these things, and you see defense contractors, government contractors, and so forth. And then you have to, like, when, Elon Musk was doing the stuff with the Doge and so forth, and they're looking at the fraud, these are where a lot of these things are going. Like, these government agencies are funding contractors, and they're misappropriating funds and doing a lot of things that were not on a level. And this is where the problem comes in, right? And so this is why we have to start taking everything with a grain of salt. And just because you see this stuff online doesn't mean that it's true.
Like, the only things I see that remain in this world that are authentic is obviously people you meet in the real world.
Yes.
It doesn't even have to be a political conversation. You go to get a haircut, the lady you talk to, that's real. Next, you have things like conversations like this. I mean, theoretically, I could still be taking money from CSIS, or you could be working for CIA to, craft your messaging. And we could get influence based on our followership. But this is far more authentic, objective, real, especially when it's long-form content and it's based on observation. Things I've seen changed in Canada over the last 30 years. But when it's like breaking news, Israel attacks Iran, and someone's like, a missile from Israel went on a northeasterly course. It flew at 30,000 feet and it crashed into Tehran, and Iran is ruined. They will collapse. And I'm like, what the fuck? You're just sharing a bunch of information to craft the narrative around it.
Yes, this is what they're doing, and they're using emotional manipulation. When you see emotional manipulation over facts, like, and reason and logic to do something, you're in a psyop. There's no way that when they're trying to persuade you. If you read, like, Edward Bernays, this guy is like the father of what they would say public relations or propaganda. This guy persuaded people to do all kinds of things, and he used the women's rights movement to get a generation of women smoking. He was the one who also changed the way that the beauty standards for women, where it came to these rail thin women that actually kind of started to look like little boys. When you look at the models that had no shape, for a long time they were just those really skinny models. That was Edward Bernays, because most people didn't think of that as the standard of beauty, but he changed their perception by using.
I just sent you an email. You don't have to bring it up if you don't want to. This happened during this ongoing Iran conflict. They're first of all, they're using women more. I think they're trying to, rightly or wrongly, say that the Iranian regime is more harsh towards women. And you got these women that are angry. And she shared a video of somebody presumably working for the government of Iran, the security force, and he was in a state of undress, like they'd lowered his pants, I think, to humiliate him, and he was bleeding. And they're kicking him, and they probably killed him. And she's saying, she was commenting on the size of the man's penis, saying, oh, this is what the Iranian government security forces are all like. And I'm thinking, like, this is. I believe she's a Westerner, too. She's diaspora, Iranian expat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jesus Christ, revoke this girl's citizenship immediately, or put him under constant guard, like surveillance. This woman's a psychopath. Is this the direction that Canada's going in, the West is going in? And I saw this happening during this Iran thing. They're normalizing violence.
Yeah, I can't. This is a family thing, so I can't put that one up.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's one of the worst ones, short of torture and execution. I'm concerned with this kind of behavior.
Yes, me too. That's really out of control. Absolutely out of control. I'm going to pull up one of the videos that you were talking about here in a minute. I'm just getting that ready. But our leaders are out of control. And this is one of the reasons why I'll say this while I'm getting this ready. This is one of the reasons why I did the petition for redress of grievances, because the legislative is like the government are the ones responsible for fixing these problems. They're just not doing it. And this gives us an avenue in which to do this, where we can hold them accountable. And whether they do it or not is not the issue. The fact is that people need to see that there is an avenue, and then the government's reaction is what's going to change people's minds, right? Because no amount of words is going to say that. But if the government sees people coming together and saying, this is my constitutional right, and there's no budging on torture, they can't, even the Supreme Court says they can't use Section 1 limits on torture.
I get what you're saying. I always say I always say there's no political solution out of this, not because we should resort to violence, but because the problem is cultural. Like, we need to fix the culture. We need to explain to the people, this is unacceptable. Like, you can't drug people against their will. You can't detain them in remand for 3 years. And then you get enough of them together. That's when you can affect change. But what you're doing is helpful, because you're trying to get people to see and listen.
Because words, especially with men, words are never going to do this. They need to see the effects of what is happening. Because when they see people doing things and then they see the response, that will get them to the point where they are prepared to listen to what needs to be done after they've witnessed the tyranny in action. This is because a lot of people don't believe that this is going on. But when people come together en masse and then they see this is going to agitate the question in people's minds in a way that no amount of words can do this. This is why it needs to be done. Because it'll, like they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, that's exactly true, right? We got the one up here from Zelensky, so we'll pull this up here.
Who in Europe needs that message to become a reality? And yet Europe hasn't even tried to build its own response. Let's look at the Western Hemisphere. President Trump led an operation in Venezuela, and Maduro was arrested, and there were different opinions about it, but the fact remains: Maduro is on trial in New York. Sorry, but Putin is not on trial. And this is the 4th year of the biggest war in Europe since World War II. And the man who started it is not only free, he is still fighting for his frozen money in Europe. And you know what? He is having some success, it's true. It's Putin who's trying to decide how the frozen Russian assets should be used, not those who have the power to punish him for this war. Thankfully, the EU decided to freeze Russian assets indefinitely, and I'm grateful for that. Thanks Ursula, thanks Antonio, and all the leaders who helped. But when the time came to use those assets to defend against Russian aggression, the decision was blocked. Putin managed to stop Europe, unfortunately. Next point. Because of the America's position, people are now avoiding the topic of the International Criminal Court. And that's understandable. It's American historical position. But at the same time, there is still no real progress on establishing a special tribunal for Russian aggression against Ukraine, against the Ukrainian people. And we have an agreement, it's true. Many meetings have taken place, but still Europe hasn't reached even the point of having a home for the tribunal with staff and actual work happening inside. What's missing? Time or political will. Too often in Europe, something else is always more urgent than justice. Right now, we are working actively with partners on security guarantees, and I'm grateful for that, but those are for after the war ends. Once the ceasefire begins, there will be contingents and joint patrols and partner flags on Ukrainian soil. And that is a very good step and the right signal that UK and France are ready to actually commit their forces on the ground, and there is already a first agreement on that. Thank you, Keir, thanks Emmanuel, and all the leaders in our coalition. And we are doing everything to make sure that our coalition of the willing truly becomes a coalition of action. And again, everyone is very positive, but, always but the backstop of President Trump is needed.
Дорогі народи, протягом свого життя я...
I just want to just respond to some of the stuff that he was saying. People don't realize what it takes to fight a war. What Zelensky is proposing is to destroy Europe when he's asking for this. Where does Europe get their fuel from? Ask yourself, where does it come from?
Right now, I'm guessing America, but it's you before Nord Stream, Russia.
It's Russia. They're not getting it from you. And if you're pissing off what you're getting from America, if you piss them off, well, where are you going to get it from? Any other supply? So if you go to fight Russia, you pissed off America, how are you going to get those tanks to roll with no fuel?
Solar energy. They got solar panels on the roofs.
How are you going to heat your homes when Russia cuts off the gas? Right? Like, you're not thinking this through. You're dependent on Russia to do a lot of things for your day-to-day life, but you want to go to war with them. Does that make sense?
Well, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. Like, I think Zelensky is under pressure because he knows that if he can't get money for Ukraine, they're probably just going to assassinate him. So he's visibly panicked. He didn't want to go to Europe, this Davos meeting, but they're like, oh, you should come. Trump is totally going to throw some money your way in security guarantees. And I think he went and met with Trump, and Trump's like, I ain't giving you nothing, boy. So he comes out pissed off, and he just that wasn't even the full speech. He laid into the EU. He starts trash talking the EU. He starts trash talking Orban. He was criticizing Iran. He mentioned Greenland. I'm guessing Trump was pissed off about that. His war is falling apart, and I almost feel for the guy. He's like, listen, I didn't want to do this war. I was gonna reach a peace deal with Russia, but you guys sent Boris Johnson, and he convinced me to keep fighting, and you'll supply us. 1-2 million Ukrainians dead over this proxy war. The guy, I think he's having a reckoning. Like, he knows he's not getting to heaven. He knows he got tricked. He knows he screwed over his own people.
Yes.
And all he has to show for it is $1 billion cash in bank accounts across Europe.
Yes, and he's he's not gonna. They're probably gonna assassinate, right? Because the people that put him there, they don't want him to talk, right? There's only so far you can. There's only so much they'll let you say before they get rid of you, right? And when if they can't control you, well, too bad for you. And that's really it. He's a loose end.
I mean, best case scenario, he gets Maduro'd and he ends up in safety of U.S.
Yeah, I mean, that's best case scenario. But I mean, like in that interview that Andrew Tate was having with that guy, I can't keep forgetting his name. The
Carrot Top.
What?
He looks like Carrot Top.
No, I can't.
The redhead.
Yeah, his name is. I want to say I can't remember. I'll have to look it up, but it starts with a J. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, he was saying that what he was talking about, he used to sell drugs and all that kind of stuff, and it was completely criminal, like gang activity and that kind of stuff. He says down there at the bottom and the guys up at the top, they're operating the same kind of way, which is true, right? You can see anybody who has any knowledge of organized crime. When you look at the way that the government's operating and the people that are running the world, this is what you see. Organized crime. And anybody who refuses to believe it, like you said, the people in the middle class are under a complete delusion. They are, because they were never exposed to this. Most of them never saw this. They didn't understand that unless they had personal experience. But the vast majority of people were sheltered from this. And so they don't want to believe the harsh realities of what is going on. Because when you're watching, it doesn't matter whether they're wearing a suit or whether they're wearing a do-rag. A gangster is a gangster, right? It doesn't matter. They're doing the same thing, except these guys are doing it instead of the local area. They're doing it with your money on a national scale. And this is what Carney is doing, right?
They also have the appearance of legitimacy. Like, take Iran. All they have to do is say Iran is the state sponsor of terrorism. When they do it, it's terrorism. When we do it, it's counterterrorism. And that becomes truth. And like, that's the foundation of your, debate, discussion, discourse moving forward. Like, if you assume that if we do it, it's counterterrorism, well, obviously you're going to end up in a position where you're right and they're wrong.
But that again is manipulation tactic, because everybody should question the government, especially when they're sending people to die, right? You want to question that. Is this justified that you're sending our sons and daughters, or mostly our sons, to go and die? Is it justified? Because when you start looking at the wars, a lot of the way the wars actually went down weren't what people were telling you, right? And so a lot of people went and died in a lot of wars that were not justified, that they had no business doing, or that they provoked or allowed that to happen because of whatever reason they were avoidable, right? And war, sometimes you have to fight them. But if you can not fight a war, then why would you? And with all the people that can foresee all of these things, you can't expect me to believe that every person in government is stupid. You can't. That is absolutely irrational. It's not possible, right?
You know how I see it? The people at the higher up you go in the government, the more they understand what they're doing. So I think Carney, he's in Canada, and he understands. He's like, Canada is it's a bad investment. It's gone belly up, and we need to offload this onto somebody else's balance sheet. But if you look at the MP, he's a banker. That's how he would talk. If you look at the MPs, probably Carney or his staffers go to them and they say, listen, we have to make sure that we don't collapse the Canadian economy. Therefore, we have to do X, Y, Z. And X, Y, Z is just more of whatever caused the bad economy to begin with.
Yeah. Speaking of Carney, let's pull up his clip that you brought over, see what he has to say.
In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with the greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window. Workers of the world unite. He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals, and we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty. They'll buy insurance, increase options in order to rebuild sovereignty.
Yeah, I didn't even. What he said at the beginning was actually partially true, but that should be what people do, is to let them know that they're not buying what they're selling anymore. Their actions need to show that they're not dealing with it. So this is the problem. Go ahead. I know you were going to say, looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, somebody, they were commenting on the speech. He goes, this is what happens when you put a central banker as a prime minister. They're talking like they're at the Chamber of Commerce, but I have a feeling he's going to get spanked pretty hardly by Donald Trump. I mean, he's going to call him up. He's like, what the F are you talking about? Like this system that we set up, this phony system benefited you. Granted, most went to the US, but you got the crumbs. Like, well, why are you criticizing it now? And I don't even know who he's speaking to, because Europe is in the pocket of the US. America surely doesn't want Canada to go towards China. I just thought it was a really poorly delivered speech.
Yeah, it was terrible, right? Like, I mean, it didn't apply to where he was doing, and everybody knows that he's destroying and burning the economy. Polarizing with China is only going to end up having more retaliation for Canada. And he's trying to pump it up with like all this rhetoric, like with the elbows up and everything else like that, and their hatred of Donald Trump. Like, I sit down and I say, Donald Trump doesn't even actually matter in this equation. It's the American people, because people don't realize how much public pressure, the importance of public pressure, and not just anybody, but the public pressure from men. Women, if you have a bunch of women protesting, it's a minor inconvenience. If you have a bunch of angry men protesting, you have the risk of deadly violence going very fast in an organized manner. It's very different. Because if a man sees another man and something goes sideways, there's always the risk of deadly force. If that person was somebody who harmed your family and you find out, well, he's probably not going to live, or he's trying to harm you. Like, men are wired very different, and so forth. So this is why they feminized the men, because they didn't want them to get up and start doing what needs to be done. And when they do pop off, they're going to be uncontrolled, because you look at these people that are screwed up on the hormones, that are going off and doing all this violent stuff. They just pop off and have no control, right? Yeah.
No, I agree with you. It's a Saturday. I don't know if I want to get into ruining my weekend by bringing up the feminization of the West. Dale, I gotta get going. I got another podcast in half an hour with Andre and Tim.
Okay, no worries. We'll close it down. Since we've on the subject, I'm just gonna play a clip before we close down, and then I'll get you to. Then we'll shut this down here. You can hang out a couple minutes more. This I want people to know, just because most people don't realize how outward this was when people said things. So let's just listen.
This might shock you, because I also thought the same for a very, very long time, that the people who created feminism actually were nice people who wanted the best for everyone and just wanted equality. Okay, here's what really happened. So Kate Millett, she was an American feminist, author, and artist. She is the founder of the National Organization for Women. Her sister, Mallory, was invited to one of the first meetings that established the National Organization for Women. So this is a feminist group that has been around since the start of the feminist movement, and they basically pioneered the whole movement. At this meeting, they gathered around a large table with Kate Millett, the chairperson, and she opened the meeting with the following back and forth recitation. So this is how the beginning of the meeting went. Why are we here today, she asked. To make revolution, they answered. What kind of revolution? The cultural revolution. How do we make cultural revolution? By destroying the American family. How do we destroy the family? By destroying the American patriarch. And how do we destroy the American patriarch? By taking away his power. And how do we do that? By destroying monogamy. And how do we destroy monogamy? By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, and homosexuality.
Well, come on.
So this proceeded with a long discussion on how to advance these goals by establishing the National Organization of Women. Leader's sister says, it was clear they desired nothing less than the utter deconstruction of Western society.
First wave feminism sought to give women men's rights without men's responsibilities. Second wave feminism sought to reduce or eliminate women's responsibilities. And third wave feminism seeks to increase men's responsibilities. And that's really the way I see it. When all the mixed messages are tallied up, we find that men can't win for losing. They still bear the majority of the burdens they did 100 years ago. To one degree or another, they are still expected to pay on the first date and onward, even months or years into the relationship. Still expected to be the higher earner in the relationship, still expected to pay most or all of the household bills, still expected to be at least as educated as their female partner, if not more, still expected to be the one to buy the ring and to buy the flowers and then to buy the chocolates on Valentine's Day, still expected to put themselves between a woman and any danger, still expected to take responsibility for themselves and others, especially women and children. The primary difference is they aren't allowed to expect any thanks, gratitude, respect, status, or reward for it. In fact, these expectations in the current zeitgeist aren't a continuation of the traditional masculine roles of yesteryear. They only exist so men can atone for their collective historical wrongdoings. That's why.
Yeah, I just wanted to close with that. The first thing that they were saying, what they're doing to destroy the patriarchy, that's how you destroy a society. If you want to overcome a society, you break down, because the men are responsible for the protection of the society. The military is mostly men. When it comes down to that, you're destroying the men. Like,
when she got to the part where she said encouraging promiscuity, polygamy, and prostitution.
Yes.
That is like when England went in during the Opium Wars and got everybody addicted to opium. Like you're getting people addicted to bad behavior so that you destabilize it and then you can go in and take it over. That's really all it really was.
That there's only one word for what they're doing. That's treason. You're destroying the country and allowing other people to destroy it, because this is how they're able to weaken it. If this wasn't done, all of this stuff that you're seeing right now would have never went this far, and we wouldn't be overrun by other people. And the people who did this, the men, like the Rockefellers and all these guys that were funding this, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they were looking for this outcome.
Yeah, sad.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll close here quickly with a prayer, and then I'll give you your final thoughts. You can tell people where they can reach you and find you. I know you got to go. I have to run that one in. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. And Lord, we thank you for all the things that you have given us, and give us the strength to deal with this tyranny and this wickedness and protect the children and restore our families, that we can have some sensibility in this country again, is my prayer. In Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So tell people where they can meet you and how they can find you.
I'm on X. My handle is Peyman Askari 451. I have a podcast, In Lay Terms, YouTube, Substack, Rumble. I also have a podcast twice a week, Philosopher, Stoic, and Teddy Bear, YouTube, Rumble, Substack, and another podcast, Cerberus at the Gate, with Andre Milosh, Timothy Knight. That's going to be in half an hour, YouTube, Substack, pod. And I also do one with my co-host, Jason James, on Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern. 8 p.m. Eastern. It's called Behind the Wall.
All right. Thank you for coming in, everybody. Please like, subscribe, share,